Welcome to another video in the JavaScript tutorial series, and in this video we'll be looking at functions. Alright, so what really is a function? Well, a function is something that executes a set of code, alright? So it can be your if-else statements, it can be your while statement, it can be your for loop, and so on. So a combination of all of those is what a function performs. There are a lot of advantages to functions, some of them being that you can actually group similar logic together to form a common function, which helps with greatly with the code readability, and functions also help in making the code look code reusable. So functions can be exported and imported. You'll see that in a lot if you're going into the web development part of the especially in JavaScript full stack. So let's not get into all that. I'm just giving some slight introduction to those kind of technologies, but functions are usually imported and exported a lot in that, so it's reused a lot. So that's what functions basically do. It just executes a piece of code, right? So function, let's just give it a name as function1, and yeah, so this is the syntax. It just consists of a function, a keyword named function, and a name of the function. Here in this case it can be anything, but we've just called function1, and two circular brackets, which we will be covering a little in a short while, but just know that this is a part of the syntax, and two curly braces, which denote the start and the end of the function. So this is where the function ends and this is where the function starts. So let's just go really simple here. Console.log hello world. Alright, so let's just print this out and see what we get. Alright, okay, undefined. Why is that so? We've just defined a function and it should be working, right? Well, here's the catch. You have to be calling this function. Alright, so this part is just the declaration of the function or the definition of the function. Alright, so in here where you actually call the function. So suppose you have this particular piece of logic and you wish to do it in an if statement. So if something is equal to this, then you want to execute this function. So that's where function calls come into picture, and that's why you need function calls, or actually. So so yeah, let's just run this and see what we get. Hello world. Yeah, now we're getting the output. So beside this, I was actually talking about this why these circle bracket, the normal brackets are used here. So these actually accept something called as parameters or arguments. Now let me just tell what are arguments. Let me just define this as item 1, right? And item 1 is basically a parameter that is passed to this function. So let's just print item here 1 here, and let's just do the same with here. Okay, we'll do one thing. We'll just pass 1. Alright, so the number 1. Let's see what we get, and we get a 1. Alright, so what we're basically doing here is we are passing parameter, we're passing a variable to this particular function. So by the time it is while we're defining it, we are just making a parameter here as a placeholder, and once we try to call the function, we will have to specify a certain we'll have to fill that placeholder up. So it can be anything. It can be a string, it can be a number, but it all depends on how your logic is set up. So if it is in an if statement, and you wish to return something, so you wish to call this function on a particular condition, so you'll be having it in an if or a switch or statement or anything for that matter. All you need to know now is that parameters exist, and you can just pass parameters to functions, and they act as placeholders for something that you pass while calling a function. So this is more eminent in callback functions, where you have functions which are accepting functions. So we'll just look into that later in the future videos, but for now we'll just have to worry about this parameters. All right, so very simple. You just have this placeholder here. You just have the actual content of the placeholder when you're calling the function, and within the function you actually try to use up that parameter or manipulate that parameter. So that's all basically what functions are. There's one more thing, actually two more things. One small thing is that you can have multiple parameters like item 2, item 3, and make sure that you have the corresponding number of make sure that you have the number of placeholders should correspond to the number of function or number of parameters you're passing to as the function. So if there are 3 placeholders here, item 1, item 2, item 3, then there should be 3 values here which try to reference that those particular placeholders. So yeah, that's one thing. You can have many number of arguments here, and another thing is you can make a function to return something. All right, so what I mean by this is let's say let's actually define let's actually make a variable. Let var1 equals true. All right, I'm sorry, true. All right, so if var1 equals true, then return 1, else return 0. All right, so yeah, so pretty straightforward here. We're defining a variable, initializing it to true, giving a value of true to it. If var1 is true, then return 1, otherwise return 0. So now this return here has a special meaning here. So what I mean by return is that you're returning this value to the main function or to the main control whenever this function is being executed. So note that the prominence of return is that return only occurs once. Right, you can't have stuff like return ABCD and immediately after that you can return something else. So it doesn't work. All right, your code will fail, it will not work. So return only happens once. You can't do this because you can't, once you hit this return, it's not going to go to any more returns. But if you have conditions like this, I'm saying you like this, I'm saying you can see here we have functions here. I'm sorry, we have conditions here in which we are returning something. So the thing is you have conditions here which are only executing once. So if you return that, that's not a problem, because when you go inside this function you have only this condition being checked once. var1 is true, yes, so return this. It's not going to go to this particular condition to return. So always remember that return only occurs once and not again and again. So only once. That's pretty much it. Now let's just run this code and see what we get. Okay, we have to call the function, sorry, function 1, and let's see, let's just yeah, since we are actually returning a function here, returning from a function here, we just have to print this function out, because we're not actually console, or we're not actually printing it within this particular function, right? So we don't have any way of expecting the output. So we just remove this, and yeah, let's just run this function and see what we get. All right, so we should be getting a 1. Let's see, and there you go, 1. So run this one more, 1. All right, so Yeah, and if I just change this to false, then we'll be getting a 0. So yeah, that's pretty much it for this video. Always remember that functions accept parameters, and those parameters act as placeholders for your called functions, and those called functions will have your values for those placeholders. All right, so and one more thing is, in return you're only returning a particular condition, or you're only returning something your output once. All right, so this is the final thing that you'll be getting. So after this is returned, the function is exited, or the control exits out of the function. All right, so that's what happens. It doesn't go anywhere else. The moment it sees a return, that's game over for that particular function. All right, so that's all you have to remember for it for now in functions, and we'll be seeing more of functions in the upcoming videos, but for now this is enough, and thank you for watching.